The lens in my glasses popped out, but they're back on. Welcome to Vermont. Welcome to Bennington College. Welcome to the first graduating class of the Bennington Writing Seminars. This is a time for thanks. It's a time to acknowledge a lot of people who have been part of this program, part of forming this program when it was but a gleam in our eye. I'll start with John Barr, the president of the trustees of Bennington College, whose first book of poems is being published next year. John, thanks very much. Elizabeth Coleman, the president of Bennington College, who asked me to write a proposal for such a program. I said, there have been a lot of writers here. There have been a lot of artists in residence here. Why don't we do something here? And so we did it. Liz Coleman. Back of me is Donald Hall, a poet, an associate faculty member, and the distinguished commencement speaker. And Sven Burkert's a member of the faculty and the director of student life in the writing seminars. I'd also like to thank Robert Wallman, the dean of the college, and Lydia English, associate dean of the college, who joined us in our procession. Where are they? Lydia, Robert, thanks very much for being here. This is a time of thanks. A really big thanks goes to Priscilla Hotchkins, the not-so-secret heroine of these seminars. Priscilla. To her, we owe a deep and enduring debt for everything that she's done to make this thing happen, make everything happen. I'd also like to thank the staff. It's a remarkable staff that we've drawn together here, mostly writers themselves. They're a real gang of maniacs, and they're one of the very fortunate staffs. When you look back in a life of work, you think, well, this probably happens 3 or 4 times in a lifetime if you're lucky. It has been a truly wonderful staff. I'd like to thank Tree Swenson, who's been the director of our publishing module, who's brought a lot of editors, publishers, and people of that sort to our attention up here. Thanks to all of them. Particularly thanks for getting things started at the beginning. Let's just say a few words. There's the role of retreat. One thing I've noticed from this program, that the role of retreat in contemporary life is a thing sorely missing. Probably churches used to take this up in our lives, and they haven't. I don't know where it's gone there, but I know that it has come here. The same line that was once at the church is at the university. But it's a place, think of the role of retreat in anyone's life, to get away from their spouses, their home, their children, their bills, anything that's part of the quotidian pressures that are currently besetting an economy where two people have to work to earn what one person used to make. What we do essentially here during these residencies is, it's a submarine. I've come to think of it as that. We go down periscope, we bop till we drop, and it's a Mobius strip where exhaustion is certainly part of the pedagogy. When you look at our graduates, when you look at the people who've just been through this residency, you realize that they have been cracked out by exhaustion, if not cracked up. We work intensively, immersively, like men and women who are soldiers about to go to war, or like negotiators in a 10-day night and afternoon negotiation that is hell-bent on finding some peace. It's also a program where people follow their own star, as they have at Bennington College and as they do here. And I think this is a star that's going to stay with people. I want to particularly thank the people who supported that going after that star. As someone who has a spouse who's a graduate student at Harvard this semester, I know it took me about 3 months to recover from my initial feeling of abandonment, that my wife was somewhere else. It's a little like living with the mother in Long Day's Journey into Night. She wanders by full of the morphine of going to school and doing papers. So I want to thank especially those people who've made that possible, for those who've come here for this retreat. The program has allowed us to return them to you after the residency. And I'd especially like to thank the children who've grown up this way, seeing their mothers and fathers go out and invest in this program. It has been an investment. It has cost you. I think that for roughly the price of a new Toyota with a decent sound system, you've paid a literal price for coming to Bennington. I think it's one of the smartest investments our graduates have ever made in their lives. I think people can already feel that. I think the people around them can already feel that. We now live in a world, better or worse, where few people will work at IBM for 30 years and then in utter synecdoche receive their retirement watch. When I graduated from high school, I graduated from a night class, and there was a 65-year-old man getting his diploma standing next to me, and I asked him why at the age of 65 he'd come back to receive his high school diploma. He said 2 reasons. Out of curiosity, 3 reasons actually. Out of curiosity, to bring something to closure, and because I thought it would be a good example for my grandchildren. I think that we live in the world of that 65-year-old man with the 20, 30 years later. This is going to be a society in which people change, in which people reinvent themselves, in which people go from project to project with perhaps 6 or 7 major kinds of work. Artists have always known how to go from project to project. They've always known how to live a life of incessant reinvention, incessant revision, and that's part of what we've been in being in this program. I think the future belongs to us. The future of education belongs to us in the way we've educated ourselves here. And a future of work belongs to us too. I have just a few things of advice to say to the graduates. I've repeated them often. ABC, always be closing. Always be closing. I'm from downtown, I'm from Mitch and Murray. Always be opening. Always be beginning. Always start from where you are. There is no other choice other than to always start from where you are. You never, ever have any other choice other than to start where you are and always be closing as we are here. I think education at its best moves people from their A to their B. One of the things we do at Bennington is we find people's A's. Students come to the center of a writer's work in an intense tutorial, but most colleges never find your A. They never get that soul-to-soul take on the student that would then allow them to take the student to their B. We pride ourselves at Bennington for making that attempt, and I think in many cases we've succeeded. Unlike editors, unlike cops, both of whom are necessary to cohere and preserve any world, education is an inherently yay-saying bit of business. So we're here today, we gather to say yay to these graduates, to say yo, to say in the spirit of Rocky, yo Adrian, in a moment of real triumph for everyone. It It was in 1993 that we put out our shingle with 5 names who would be teaching in our programs. We built it, and they came. And you're in the same snow now that people have been in the first class who came here to jostle down paths like monks going from fire to fire and building to building. I'd like to introduce Sven Burkerts now, the Director of Students. He's going to say a few words himself.
Thank you, and good afternoon. You should know that as one who strains for the laugh-triggering wisecrack as a jungle plant strains for the sun, the tones of reverential decorousness are all but unattainable. I will do what I can to surmount the obstacles of temperament. I've been trudging the snowy path between Commons and Davis Alumni House for days now, using the to and fro of my commute to focus in on the meaning of this moment and to ponder what observations I might offer. I thought naturally of taking the tack of reminiscence, summoning up yet again that bone-breakingly cold January 2 years ago when I arrived as an associate lecturer and first met all of you. That session when we were all like so many castaways playing out a kind of Gilligan's Island of the Antipodes, Liam the skipper, David Lehman the professor, and Maudie Benz our ginger. But no, then I thought I should be more august, reflect instead from my quasi-official perch as your student director, minting the phrases that mean to rally group spirit around this institution. But no again, such a pitch would be anathema to one so deeply suspicious of institutions and so thoroughly bereft of rah-rah. It was in mid-stride, as ever, during one of these trudges that it came to me, not the idea, but the feeling of the idea. And though it is yet somewhat inchoate, I will try to put it across. My thought, my conceit is this, that just as it is possible to see a group as a collection of individuals and nothing more, so it is also sometimes possible to grasp from a different vantage a group spirit or a sense of collective identity. We know this. And if we are able to view people thus, why not also view that which people create out of themselves? I mean, since first signing on here, I have noticed, and then more attentively, ever more attentively, begun to watch a strange, incessantly mutating entity, by which I don't mean any one person's writing, but the outwardly disparate writings of 20 artists that have magically assumed a single creaturely life. When I arrived, this animal was, if anything at all, a yelpy young thing in search of some ground for its legs. But now, after a mere 2 years, it has grown robust and contentious. We fed it warm milk from a dropper, but now it wants its steak tartare. We had it in a warm little stall at first, but now you can hear it groaning in its fortified cage. Exuberant analogizing, but I think everybody knows what I mean. Something has come alive here that is bigger than the sum of each individual's output. And we are here to honor this something, to honor it above all else, because without it, frankly, we might as well be in camp making lanyards and roasting weenies over the fire. And now the MFA candidates will speak. Thank you.
Why do we write?
Look at us now, the first 20, afflicted with the disease of the pen. The painter John Register said, "Every painting starts with a pure vision. Every brushstroke leads you further away from the vision. At the end, if the vision is barely discernible, you have to be grateful."
As writers, we are compelled to write in an attempt to shape silent things into words, to reach into the stillness of ourselves and bring forth meaning.
The Roman satirical poet Juvenal said in 100 AD that many suffer from the incurable disease of writing, and it becomes chronic in their sick mind. If that be true, then consider our suffering to be a class action, and our sickness to be a wonderful, incurable plague passed down to all of you.
Ford Maddox Ford. It's not unusual in human beings who have witnessed the sack of a city or the falling to pieces of a people to desire to set down what they have witnessed for the benefit of unknown heirs or of generations infinitely remote, or, if you please, just get the sight out of their heads.
To capture the human experience within the confines of a book, a poem, or an essay, to form a composite of truth out of what we have in some way experienced.
Rilke says, "Works of art are an infinite loneliness. Everything is gestation and then bringing forth. To let each impression and each germ of a feeling come to completion wholly in itself, in the dark, in the inexpressible, the unconscious, beyond the reach of one's own intelligence, and await with deep humility and patience the birth hour of a new clarity. That alone is living the artist's life."
I love the life of words, lonely words, almost dying words, torn into prefixes and suffixes and stitched together, found in a life-giving dictionary, or huddled in sentences to give me a warm life to read and write.
I write to discover what happens when words from memory and fantasy collide. In my head exists a bizarre planet.
Tim O'Brien writes, "There is no clarity. Everything swirls. The old rules are no longer binding. The old truths no longer true. Right spills over into wrong. Order blends into chaos. Love into hate. Ugliness into beauty. Law into anarchy. Civility into savagery. The vapors suck you in. You can't tell where you are or why you're there, and the only certainty is overwhelming ambiguity."
Liam once said of my poems, "Welcome to the strange world of Gail Hathaway." His comment pleased me.
I don't know where the impulse to write comes from. I do know that for all the years I didn't write, something fundamental was missing in my world.
At the first residency, Liam told 6 poets then in the program that he thought our purpose as writers was nothing less than to create masterpieces or die trying. That still seems like the right challenge. In the process of trying, I am discovering why I write. To retreat, to learn, to touch others, to feel whole.
I stare at the blank page. I make a call to a friend I haven't talked to for a long time. I go back to the page and I realize it just isn't happening today.
Isaac Denison said, "I write a little without hope, a little every day without hope and without despair."
Kenneth Koch wrote, "You've got to sit down and write. Solved. But what I write isn't any good. Unsolved. Try harder. Solved. No results. Unsolved. Try taking a walk. Solved. An intelligent, pliable, luminous, spurting, quiet, delicate, amiable, slender line, like someone who really loves me for 1 second. What a life. Solved. Temporarily."
The friend comes over for a meal, and somewhere in that meal and in that conversation, I discover what it was I should have put on that blank page. I write a note to myself and know what must be done in tomorrow's work as soon as the friend has left.
Patricia Lear, "I just let it be hard while it is hard, without going crazy for it to get easy."
Graham Greene, "Be disloyal. It's your duty to the human race. The human race needs to survive, and it's the loyal man who dies first from anxiety or bullet or overwork. If you have to earn a living and the price they make you pay is loyalty, be a double agent. And never let either of the two sides know your real name.
Writing is the only thing I do that lets me feel private and connected at the same time.
As a writer, I am obligated to delve into the psyche of my generation, to portray its nuances and complexities, its trends and traits through the lives of my characters. Each generation uniquely marks the time continuum, and I am my generation's record keeper.
It is here that the transformation began from small to large, here where I was immersed in the ecstatic world of literature, confronted its profound power, went beyond the torment, the tedium, and the pretense, and here I was embraced by the community that breathes and sings these excesses.
In pursuit of a life filled with inquisitiveness, I chose to fill my days with writing, reading, and the arts. I came to Bennington to improve my craft and knowledge, to commune with a circle of like-minded students and faculty and staff. I hope to know you all for a lifetime and share with you the goal of making people laugh and cry and think, of giving each day the best that I've got.
Looking back, I see rocks, underbrush, a steep hill, a forest of evergreens and maples, and a brook bordered by wildflowers. As the sweat of exertion cools, accomplishment mingles with anticipation, for in this moment, the last step of this adventure is the beginning of another.
Now my family is here. In the presence of those I love, this is a singular moment so full. In this moment, in this place, I have it all. Our circular world, love, art, beginning, and never ending.
And I'm going to close our speech with a poem. This is on behalf of Maudie Benz, another graduate who could not be here today. The poem I'm going to read is entitled On the Road. It's written by Anna Akhmatova and translated by Jane Kenyon. On the road. Though this land is not my own, I will never forget it, or the waters of its ocean, fresh and delicately icy. Sand on the bottom is whiter than chalk, and the air drunk like wine. Late sun lays bare the rosy limbs of the pine trees, and the sun goes down in waves of ether in such a way that I can't tell if the day is ending, or the world, or if the secret of secrets is within me again.
Thank you. I'd like to devote this resident graduation ceremony further to the poet Jane Kenyon, who taught John Keats, Anna Akhmatova, and Elizabeth Bishop to us here in the first program. We expected for Jane to be with us for quite some time. She died last year of leukemia, so we dedicate this graduation ceremony to her. Very happy that her husband, the poet Donald Hall, is here to speak as our commencement speaker. A lot to say about Donald Hall. He's published a lot of books. He's the poet laureate of New Hampshire. New Hampshire people believe in what's called WUK, W-U-K. He's one of the great workers. He's one of the great writers of our time. And after Don speaks, Robert Bly is also going to read a poem. Donald Hall.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations to you. We knew you 2 years ago at the very beginning, Jane and I here together, and I'm glad at any rate that I can be here to see you graduate after so much hard work, and thank you. Congratulations to family and friends who are here also, to faculty and staff. I know a little bit about how hard they work, too. 2 years ago, we were a little band of brothers, 20, 22 students and smaller faculty, of course. There was a wonderful intimacy, excitement, warmth, and love of literature that was there with us and sustained us. I guess Jane and I were only here 5 days, but we got a good dose of it, and it was marvelous. We both loved it. But we both wondered, can this survive expansion? It can, and it has. I want to congratulate the program, the concept. I want to congratulate Bennington, president, trustees, and of course to congratulate Liam, and congratulate them for accepting his crazy ideas as ever, which are the driving force. I think it's a magnificent program. Liam and Tree, Scylla very much, Sven, and faculty have made it something extraordinary. And I think something extraordinary as a locus of literary energy now available to people of talent and ability in the United States who can manage to get away for these exhausting days and the exhausting rest of the year, for that matter. There's such energy here. There's great surprise here. There's great affection and fun and a love of literature or of art that drives the engine. When Scylla needed a title a few months ago, I had no idea what I would talk about, and probably I still don't. But I knew that by taking the title of Life, Death, and Literature, I could talk about anything I wanted to. That was fun. And in fact, I did not know that the students would end their presentation with a poem translated by Jane, or that Liam would speak of her now. The last 9 months since Jane's death, I have been working, old walk, a lot. But I have not written anything in poetry or prose except on Jane. Sometime I'll write about something else. So when I give a graduation address, Jane will be in it also. I am also the ancient mariner in person. If I go into a diner and somebody says, please pass the salt, I pass it and I say, that's strange, my wife likes salt. She used to salt her food sometime, you know. And I should say to guests and people who've come from elsewhere that Jane Kenyon was a poet, a marvelous poet, that we were married many years, that just after we left Bennington at the first session in January of 1994, she began to develop what seemed to be flu symptoms, and after a couple of weeks were diagnosed as leukemia. And she lived for 15 years trying to stay alive by undergoing chemotherapy and, of course, and as well a bone marrow transplant. And until 11 days before she died last April, we thought that she might be able to make it. And then the leukemia came back despite the BMT, and she died. This class of graduates has been with us all the time, while Jane was alive, and with me after she died. And I'm grateful for that. Their attention, and they were constantly told what was happening in the newsletter that Liam would supply, the letters that Liam would supply. And I have felt this great closeness between Jane and this class. When I'm finished talking at you, I'm going to read part of one of the poems I've been working on over the last 9 months, which is one of my letters to Jane, which contains some of the things that I will be talking about in this prose, if indeed I manage to speak prose, beforehand. And then Robert Bly is going to read one poem by Jane when I sit down. When she was here, she lectured on her 3 favorite poets of the moment, and really mostly of her adult life: John Keats, Anna Akhmatova, and Elizabeth Bishop. It was no accident that she took what was the best and what was at the center of her life when she was talking to people undergoing an MFA. Her eye was always on the apple of there is only one apple, and that is the apple of great art, the apple of great literature. I intend to be as high-flown as Sven swears not to be here. This was one thing that kept me honest, living with her all these years. She knew what she cared for. When we, coming back to my title for a second, Life, Death, and Literature, we are born and we die, and in between there's literature, at least for some of us. In between, I want to say, for the happiest of us, there is great art. There are many other things, and love is absolutely essential. But of course, love is not dependable. Love dies, and the people we love die, and we are in love with what perishes. What's dependable? Well, you can't live without the undependable things, but it's nice to have some dependable ones too. South of the house where I always say we live, where we lived and I live now, there's a mountain called Mount Kearsarge. That is the dominating mountain of the area. It's not much of a mountain, but it dominates anyway. I mean, it's not very high. It's very beautiful. We look at it. My grandmother, who died at 97, spent almost all of her life first thing in the day looking out and checking out the mountain. Mountain's real pretty today. And if there were a God resident in a local mountain, this would be the one. We moved, Jane and I, to New Hampshire 20 years ago and loved the people. The old people we met especially, and they're almost all gone now. And now Jane is gone at the age of 47, and the mountain survives. And great art survives, and that is one reason we love it and why we want to connect to art by trying to make our own art. This is my connection. The mountains of great art, which are also the mountains of mountains, are solace against loss. They are also joy, and they're inspiriting in life. But partly, I believe they are inspiriting because they suggest the possibilities of permanence. Down with throwaway art. There's always been lots and lots of throwaway art. Right now, there's a lot that's deliberately throwaway art. I think it's part of the throwaway life that I think becomes increasingly, in our social despair, a problem for us. And up with permanence or notions of permanence. And I suggest art against death and great art against death. I know that the mountain wears down. Kearsarge wears down. Rilke worried about the death of the sun when everything would burn up, including all paintings and all poems. But there's a tolerable difference between the human span, which is often nasty, brutal, and short, and the span of the greatness of art or the greatness of the landscape, when the despoilers do not get in and spoil it. Pictures burn, pictures drown. The artillery assault on the city knocks down the church, but still these things are longer lasting than we are. They may, in one mood, mock our fragility, but they also seem to me to be something against which our fragility can comfort itself by their very endurance. If we make art, and if we love art in our brief lives, we take part in a kind of struggle against loss and desolation, which is inevitable for any of us. Jane's tombstone in New Hampshire has two lines from a poem of hers. The poem is called Afternoon at McDowell's, and in this, at McDowell, I guess. And in the summer of 1992, when I had just had a big operation and I didn't have a very good chance for living very long, we went down to McDowell Colony because Richard Wilbur was getting the gold medal that day, wonderful poet, old friend. And we heard him read his poems, and we heard some music, some lovely music, as part of the program. She wrote a poem describing all that, and then saying, after music and poetry, we walked to the car. I believe in the miracles of art, but what prodigy will keep you safe beside me? On her tombstone, I have those lines. I believe in the miracles of art, but what prodigy will keep you safe beside me? When Jane said she believed in the miracles of art, she used a kind of religious word, and she meant it. She did not make art a religion. Religion was religion for Jane, but art was part of God's goodness. It was man-made part of God's goodness that was of utter importance to her and at the center of her life. And the great art that she loved so much, that was outside of herself, that was created centuries ago or whatever, were still guidelines, lodestones for her own endeavor to try to make her life into something like this. She loved other things. She was a lover and a wife. She was a hospice worker. She loved her church. She loved her friends. I mean, some of her dearest friends are here. Alice Mattison, her great dear friend and working friend. Liam and Tree, who were tremendously close to us, who came out to Seattle when we had the BMT tea out there. Robert Bly, my old pal from 1,000 years ago, who was so important to Jane, and in fact who was the person who suggested that she go to Akhmatova for a model. An incredible bit of advice in the course of her life. I'm so glad they're here. And Jane loved the natural world. She loved flowers and loved to make them. But great art was at the center. Out of love for permanent art, she wanted to make it. Now, this does not mean that she knew she would. But she did not want to be good. She did not want to be in the New Yorker. She was perfectly happy when she was. And when people gave her prizes, she wasn't that far out of it. But she knew what the apple was. She knew she wanted to make what Akhmatova made, or what Keats made. Enormous conceit, I suppose, for all of us, or any of us, to think that we might do that sort of thing. But I think it's the only way to enter the world of literature as a potential artists. It was not only the poets, of course, it was Beethoven or Messiaen, it was, music was enormously important. It was Vermeer or contemporary American painter William Bailey, who showed her how to write poems. Matisse, with his enormous love of the body. Most of us will not make permanent art. Who knows whether Jane had it not? Of course, I believe it often and want to believe it, but I know I don't know. And no one knows about themselves, no one ever will know. The only troubling thing about that is if you don't know the opposite either. But I don't think there's much point in working in literature and working in the arts without wishing to be, striving to be, working toward that condition of permanence, that condition of greatness. Perhaps only if you try for that, you ever do anything at all. When Sven and I were working on our notes this morning, he said, above all, don't say go forth. Therefore, of course, I want to say go forth. But I want to say that the artist has to go forth every day. The artist has to tell himself, go forth every day. I spent a certain amount of time in the late 50s and the early 60s with Henry Moore, and he was my model of the artist more than any of the poets I ever knew. Fantastic. I learned more from him about the endeavor to make art. He was a wonderful, relaxed, friendly, easy man who liked to sit around, have a drink, and talk. But at the core of him was this intense desire. And he did not want to win a prize, or he didn't want to be better than Barbara Hepworth. I mean, he wanted to be better than Donatello. And he worked, sometimes he felt as if Donatello and Michelangelo were hovering over him. But every time he finished it, he knew it wasn't quite right. But he had the temperament to go forth. And then the next day, he decided, this one is going to be it. And so on. When I talked to him when he was 80, I've said this many times, I'm going to say it again. He was 80 years old, not slowing down yet, but he slowed down 5 or 6 years later. And I said, all right, you're 80 years old. What's the meaning of life? Explain the meaning of life. And he didn't smile or anything. He just told me the meaning of life, that's all. He said the secret of life, it's probably the word I used, was to want to do something with an overwhelming passion for your whole life and to concentrate your entire life on that ambition and that desire, and do it every day, and go to it. And when you fail at it, pick it up again and try again. And the only essential thing about this goal or desire was that it was something you could not possibly do. So, go forth. The guidelines for us in our daily life, trying to make art, trying to make literature, are the works of great art, be they Chekhov or Tolstoy, be they Bach or Matisse. In an attempt to make literature, we connect ourselves to the mountains of great art. By our connection with it, by our desire for it, we sustain and keep the possibility going. I want now to read a few excerpts from a poem. I've been writing Jane a lot of letters, and I'm going to read about a third or a half of the August letter that I've been writing to Jane, because parts of it relate to things that I've been speaking of, and I say that I need to tell you that a person called Philippa enters this poem, and that is my daughter's name. The poem later on explains that this is my daughter, but I want you to know it when you first hear it. And when I finish, I'm just going to sit down, and then Robert is going to come up and read a poem by Jane. The polished black granite marker cemented over your head reflects the full moon of August tonight, 4 months from the day we learned you would die. For you, the gloom of August was annual, as you watched the red leaves on Huldah's maple burn down your summer's day of blossom. There's always news. Kate McKay had me to supper in Grafton to read your poems to our Hitchcock nurses. Mary hooted when I read the shirt. I was happy walking to the car under the early July night, harsh with stars. Then I thought you would have loved it so much to be there. We scattered your mother's ashes in Eagle Pond, where we watched your father's hover and sink a dozen years ago. Your brother Rule cast Polly into a scud of wind, and she flew in a golden swarm down into the dark water. These days I wake at 5:30. When I finish working on poems, I turn to the taxis, cull books from my shelves, read mail and answer it, keeping busy. Last week for a photo session, I sat speechless for an hour, posed by daylilies and barns, and my idle mind entered the coffin, where even the white of your salwar kameez was black. My mind made a jingle, rhyming ants with lips. Philippa brought the granddaughters from Concord to wade in Eagle Pond. Allison showed me a wild strawberry plant, naming the green. Abigail snatched at minnows, laughing as they escaped. For an hour I watched the beautiful sisters play, feeling comfort, my tall, grave daughter beside me. Every day I look at your words, inscribed on shiny black stone, that you wrote when I was supposed to die. I believe in the miracles of art, but what prodigy will keep you safe beside me? When Ozawa exhorted Mahler from the BSO, I sat by your side, witnessing as your spirit hovered like a hummingbird and vibrated in Symphony Hall. Standing together, we gazed, perfected by William Bailey's painted light. Your words, incised in granite, will endure like Keats's vase, or like the complaints and endearments Chekhov's coachman whispered into the snowy ear of his horse. But nothing will ever keep safe the carpenter or his bride, the policeman, the drunk, the nurse, or lovers in poetry's house. Thank you.
This is a poem by Jane Kenyon called Briefly It Enters and Briefly Speaks. I am the blossom pressed in a book, found again after 200 years. I am the maker, the lover, and the keeper. When the young girl who starves sits down to a table, she will sit beside me. I am food on the prisoner's plate. I am water rushing to the wellhead, filling the pitcher until it spills. I am the patient gardener of the dry and weedy garden. I am the stone step, the latch, and the working hinge. I am the heart contracted by joy, the longest hair, white before all the rest. I am there in the basket of fruit presented to the widow. I am the musk rose opening, unattended, the fern on the boggy summit. I am the one whose love overcomes you, already with you when you think to call my name.
Thank you, Robert Bly, and thank you, Donald Hall. I have heard more than my share, as you might guess, of commencement addresses. I will never hear the likes of that again. Thank you to this graduating class for making it impossible for the next class to begin to figure out what in the world they're going to do. Most of all, of course, heartiest congratulations to you from this college. We greet you today with pride, great affection, and great joy. And also, of course, welcome to those in the bleachers, family, friends, and fellow conspirators. Before proceeding to the formal part of the ceremony, I would like to take a moment to thank the rector, whose sublime confidence in this enterprise, like dreaming Joseph in how we memorize words, and whose exquisite taste in its implementation are the lifeline and the lifeblood of this accomplishment. With Scylla coordinating a myriad of details, Liam has been the sure force in gathering a distinguished faculty to work word by word with gifted students. Liam has crafted a blend of tradition and innovation that is the mark of excellence, which together with his own special panache creates and sustains this very special community of writers, one of high intelligence, human. The Board of Trustees and the faculty and administration of Bennington College are assembled here this morning. It's actually not this morning, it's this evening, to give formal voice to the award of degrees to the first graduating class of the writing seminars. This assembly provides a fitting occasion to reaffirm the principles of this remarkable college. I want to begin by reading to you the traditional commencement statement which we have presented over the years. Bennington regards education as a sensual and ethical, no less than an intellectual process. It seeks to liberate and nurture the individuality, the creative intelligence, and the ethical and aesthetic sensibility of its students, to the end that their richly varied natural endowments will be directed toward self-fulfillment and toward constructive social purposes. We believe that these educational goals are best served by demanding of our students active participation in the planning of their own programs and in the regulation of their own lives on campus. Student freedom is not the absence of restraint, however, it is rather the fullest possible substitution of habits of self-restraint for restraint imposed by others. The exercise of student freedom is the very condition of a meaningful education and an essential aspect of the nurture of free citizens dedicated to civilized values and capable of creative and constructive membership in modern society. The degrees we are about to award certify that these students have successfully met the standards of quality in academic achievement and of responsibility and citizenship set by this college. The extent to which they have fulfilled the college's and other important aims cannot be formally certified, but the degrees do indeed express our confidence that they have understood our ideals and that they will do credit to themselves and their communities. At the Bennington, the degree means at least one other thing. Education here is a reciprocal affair. We who are charged with the instruction and educational policy have received as well as given. We have learned from these students as well as taught and advised them. The conferring of the degree is thus an acknowledgement of the contribution to ourselves personally and to the college which these students have made. We shall continue to follow these students with interest and affection as they take their role in other communities. To those communities, we confidently recommend them. At Bennington, we shall miss them. Will the representative of the faculty present the recommendations for the award of degrees?
President Coleman, as a representative of the faculty, I present the candidates of the first class of the writing seminars for the award of the degree of Master of Fine Arts. Candidates, please rise.
Members of the faculty, these students who have fulfilled all requirements for graduation are recommended for the award of the Master of Fine Arts degree. Do you nominate these candidates to the trustees for these purposes? If so, please signify your approval by rising. Chairman of the Board, I present for the consideration of the trustees the students you have heard formally nominated by the faculty for the degree of Master of Arts.
Please be seated. Members of the graduating class, the trustees on the nomination of the faculty are proud to award you the degree of Master of Fine Arts with all the rights and privileges pertaining to that degree here or elsewhere. As your names are read, please come forward to receive your diplomas and hood.
Eugene Baker.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Maudie Louise Benz. Maudie can't be here today, but the next candidate will accept her diploma as well. Wendy Travis Button. George Burr Carver. Victoria Elaine Clousey. Victoria Estern. Ruth Farmer.
Here we are.
Mark S. Guralnik. Colette Kelso-Guren. Stacy Drew Harwood. Gail Ellen Hathaway. Tamara Zanetta Hollins. William Hunt. Perrin Hurst Ireland. Therese Callahan James. John Edward Lane. Carol Maureen Merritt.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Robin Mara Nydorf. Brenda G. Pitts.
Congratulations.
Finally, Timothy James Wooten.
Thank Before formally concluding this ceremony, I would like to ask John Barr, Chairman of the Board of Trustees, to say a few words. John.
Liz, thank you. I'll be brief. If this wonderful ceremony can stand one more word of praise, I'd like to give that word of praise from the Board of Trustees at Bennington. Liz said earlier in her remarks that this program started as a gleam in Liam Rector's eye in 1993. At that time, she became excited about it and started talking to a few of the trustees, and I could see it become a gleam in her eye. 1993 was a special year for Bennington College. We were in the middle of many other things and didn't feel like we had much money around for new initiatives. My recollection, Liam, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that it cost about $30,000 of seed money to launch this program. Money we certainly didn't have in a technical sense. So Liz didn't ask the board, she told the board. And I remember the board meeting where she just said, I'm going to do this, and I didn't say anything. I was sitting there thinking, gee, if this falls flat on its face, she's going to be looking for company here because she didn't ask anybody about it. Obviously, it's done just the opposite. I think in a businessman's mind, one might have looked at this program a few years ago and said that this writing seminar program is a late entry in a crowded field in higher education. But that business mind would have missed two key points. But this group of people in this college. So here we see the first class of this program in the course of just a few years accelerating to the forefront of programs of this kind in the country. And I think it's totally consistent with everything that the board had hoped to see at Bennington College in every other way. So congratulations to all of you.
Liam used to say to me, Liz, what are you going to say to the board? And I said, don't worry. With this formal recognition of academic accomplishment, you join the company of those from this college and all other colleges and universities who have been admitted to the special opportunities and obligations which the Master of Fine Arts degree implies. In the name of all here, trustees, instructors, fellow students, parents, friends, yourselves, I congratulate you. Everyone should please follow the graduates to the reception.
Thank you.